All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Horror Analysis with me, Drew. Hey, folks. Today, continuing with Section E, Non-Narrative Horror. We're continuing on to horror music. Ta-da! And, I don't even know why I was thinking that I could get all of horror music onto one video. That was ridiculous. So, I might have to break it up further than I'm breaking it up now, but I'm going to try to get horror classical music on this video, and hopefully I won't have to break horror contemporary music into two, but I might. Just my list of genres or subgenres going into this. You know, there's the shock rock people, there's the psychobillies or goth billies, industrial, dark wave, cold wave, ambient, horrorcore, witch punk, horror punk, death rock, doom metal, all sorts of stuff for contemporary. And I don't even know if I'm going to have to split that up into two things. Been getting into Witch House. I'm enjoying that. It's very close to shoegaze, which is a genre I enjoy. But today I'm going over classical music, which is a genre I enjoy as well, but that to say classical music is even a genre is a little ridiculous. Because, classical music, that's a mega genre. It's just a division between classical and contemporary. Or popular, classical and popular music, I suppose, is probably the better division. And I'm going to miss a lot on classical music. I have 7 things to talk about, and some of these I'm not even considering horror, I'm just considering it atmospheric. How far back are we going in classical? Well, no, not really that far back. 1815 is the earliest one I want to talk about. And I'm sure there's stuff earlier. I'm sure there's stuff in between. I'm sure there's stuff later. I just, I'm going to miss it. Because it's not my forte. I have the classical music on in my car most of the time. But I usually have it in between CDs when I'm listening to an audiobook or I'm putting in a punk CD or something. In between listening to punk CDs, I'll take a CD out and I'll listen to a little bit of classical before I put the next punk CD in, or, metal or goth or whatever I'm in the mood for. You get a lot of weird vibes from classical music, especially with these guys. These guys are either Russian or German for the most part, or one Norwegian guy. And it was either German influential in the Nazi movement or German happened during the Nazi movement. Or Russian influential on the revolution, or Russian post-revolution Soviet composers. There's this weird nationalistic vibe throughout this section here. Well, and of course, German. There's so much great classical music from Germany. It was a big hub of classical music. And then, the Nazis pretty much shut down all folk music. They thought it was inferior and all those things that Nazis say. I'm going way off topic. But this point, which isn't a horror point, but it's a point I want to make, is, the folk music or punk music or the popular music of the people, is in a real way anti-fascist. It's anti, what's the word? Pretentious. I have this punk mindset where I tell my friends, friends are like all into metal or something, but like, why are these songs more than 4 minutes long? They don't have a really good reason for being over 4 minutes long. I don't get it. And that's the punk or the folk or the blues. You better have a dang good reason for your songs being over 4 minutes long. Otherwise, you just sound pretentious. Classical, they have a good reason. The movement of the piece is if it's over 4 minutes long, there better be a good reason. It better keep my interest for that 4 minutes. And some of these, honestly, for some of these, Prokofiev, for instance, I had to skip into it every 3 minutes. Like, okay, I get this section. It's going to repeat a couple times. Shostakovich, same thing. I actually quite like Prokofiev and Shostakovich, but it a little went a long way. And for these guys, it was... I dropped a pen. For these guys, it was atmospheric, more than horrific. The other thing I've been harping on, and will continue to harp on, is if one of these stories, if one of these pieces of music, rather, is narrative, be it opera or be it part of a ballet or something along those lines, Prokofiev was doing his music for a movie. Grieg was doing his music for a play. It's background music for a movie. Not background music, but what's the words I'm after? I guess background music. Accompanying music for a performance, which tells a story. Sort of like, John Williams and the stuff for Star Wars. Duel of Fates could be this sort of dark, atmospheric, intense music, but it's part of a story. You imagine lightsaber battles while the music's playing. So I can't really consider it non-narrative in that sense. If it's narrative in some sense, it's horror, or it could be horror. If it's non-narrative, I only get atmosphericness from it. Atmospherosity? No, I just get an atmospheric feel to it. Near horror. Atmospheric, but not horror itself. I'm going to go chronologically because that's the way I had it on here. I only have 7 people, so it shouldn't be that long of a video. Now 9 minutes in, then we got to the meat of things. The first one is certainly narrative because it's Der Ölkönig, which I talked about as being a narrative poem last time by Goethe. And it was in 1815, Franz Schubert made it into an operatic. He took the words of the poem by Schubert, by Goethe, and put music along with it, so it was an opera piece. There is 2 really good ones that I recommend for performances of this. Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau and Jesse Norman. One's about Dietrich Fisher Discow is a baritone singer, and Jesse Norman is a soprano. So it's two different versions. It's the story of Der Erlkönig, which I've talked about a couple times, and it is horrific. In that it's the story of a boy being killed while riding home, taken from his father by the Elder King, the Erlkönig. So that one I certainly consider to be horror. This is the first chronologically on the list. This is Franz Schubert. This was 1815 is when Der Erlkönig was done by Schubert. He's one of the German. He was an Austrian German. He wrote in German, but he was an Austrian composer. As I said, Germany is going to pop up a lot, with Russia popping up a lot as well. And that one certainly I consider to be horror. Next one is not so much horror, atmospheric. It's Wagner. And it's Ride of the Valkyries, which most people do not consider to be horror. I did see, when researching all this stuff, I saw a good performance of Ride of the Valkyries from not just a bunch of singers, sopranos, and contraltos on stage singing it, but in costume. I saw a couple of each, actually. Of them in costume doing the Ride of the Valkyries throughout, pretty much the whole piece, not just the musical beginning that most people are familiar with. And it's, Valkyries were the people who take the corpses back to Valhalla. They're corpse grabbers, stealers. So they're picking up bones, or they're playing with dead things, which is interesting. A bunch of women playing with dead things is not horrific, because it's not really horrific in the sense that the way they're doing it, but it's certainly atmospheric. It's certainly that sort of dark thing. Ride of the Valkyries, the music itself, can I say that's horrific? No, not really. It's der Ring des Nibelungen. I don't care enough about Wagner to even say it right, if I could pronounce it correctly. Wagner is well known for being a dick. And he deserves that reputation of being a dick, so I don't really care that much. I will say that the Ring des Nibelungen is still being produced by, the full thing is still being produced by SP Somtau in Thailand, because he's the Thai opera director. I think still the Thai opera director in Thailand, as well as a horror writer. So there's connections with Wagner and horror all over the place. And of course, the story of the Ring des Nibelungen, you can find not the libretto, but I'm sure you can find the libretto as well. But the story behind it, who wrote? Someone wrote, like, the story out, famously. I think it might have been George Bernard Shaw. Wrote the story out and had it, and it was available on LibriVox. I'm not sure if it still is. I recommend, like, reading it, listening to it, it's an interesting thing. Is it Shaw? I think it might be. I'll see if I can find that out and put it in here. But the whole Nibelung's Ring, there's a lot going on, including, from Guy, the first person in the story, Das Rheingold, I think was the first one, to the end of the death of the gods, immolation of the gods, Wotan's farewell, etc. Ragnarok. It's the end of the apocalypse type thing of the gods. Ragnarok, whatever it is. There's some intense moments in the ring. Does the music match? I can't say it does. From what I've tried to hear of it, he usually goes for dramatic. Wagner likes his drama, as opposed to trying to scare you, which is, what we're after here. But it's not what Wagner was after. So going on, this next one, this next one confuses me. It's Night on Bald Mountain. No, it's not. That's number 4. Number 3 is Grieg. The lone Edvard Grieg, the lone Norwegian in this section. Not that it is from Peer Gynt, which is written by. I knew it a second ago and then I forgot it. Peer Gynt was written by the Norwegian playwright, the only one I know, and I can't think of. Ibsen, Heinrich Ibsen. And Grieg did the music for it, famously in the Hall of the Mountain King. Is it horror? No, it's not really horror, but it's that sort of atmospheric, dreamy, dark stuff that I think is worth mentioning. Right. So that's Edvard Grieg, 1867. Ride of the Valkyries by Wagner, I forgot to say, was 1851, so I'm going in alphabetical order. 1886 was Night on Bald Mountain. That's the next one I want to talk about. This one confused me in that Wikipedia didn't give me a straight answer who wrote it. It's either Modest Mussorgsky or Rimsky-Korsakov. Or both in some sort of collaboration that I don't understand. These guys are Russian, first Russians on the list. This, I don't have the picture of it, and I don't have the thing. It's back there. I did put it up on an earlier video. A picture of, maybe I can find it through here. A picture from Fantasia, because Night on Bald Mountain was in Fantasia. It's not that one. Not that one either. Nope, maybe not. Anyway, Night on Bald Mountain in Fantasia is a very horrific type thing. It's the guy, the monster in the mountain that gets all the dead people, and they rise up from the graves, and the demons are marching around. He's got horns, he's got wings, he's devilish, if not the devil himself. I would say that the music itself is horrific, or very close to being horrific without. This is also part of a play, so I'm not sure how non-narrative I can call it. In its proper setting, it would be part of a story. That being said, it's usually taking on its own, and it's usually associated with this Disney piece. Most people see it in their heads when they're listening to it. So this one's it's a gray area piece, but I would say that it's quite possible that this one is horrific in some non-narrative way. It's close to a counterexample as I have to my earlier statement that if it's non-narrative, it's atmospheric, and if it's narrative, it can be horrific. This one comes close. Let's see if I can get the picture up real quick. Hold on a second, folks. Oh no, okay. Fantasia, Night on Bald Mountain. I don't want to YouTube it, but I do want that guy. Can I get that? Save image as. And can I put it on here? Don't you love when I do this right in the middle of a video? Hey, there he is. So you guys probably recognize him if you've ever seen Fantasia. And this is from The Night on Bald Mountain, part of Fantasia. So that's a demonic character. And then, of course, the ghostly, ghastly figures and demonic figures from that sequence. I mean, it's Disneyfied, so I can't say it's horror in the truest sense, but it's dark. It's certainly horror in a Disney sense. If a kid watched it, like, I don't know what age I watched Fantasia for the first time, but it probably creeped me out. I don't remember it, because it was probably a while ago. Yeah, I can say that guy creeped me out. Anyway. Moving on. Now we come to the World War II era. Carl Orff. Oh, this is Carl Orff. 1935, 1936, he wrote Carmina Burana, or adapted Carmina Burana, which was a epic poem. I think I'm remembering that correctly. Let me see if I can double check that. There we go. Oh, for goodness sakes. Songs from Bern. A manuscript of poems and dramatic texts from the 11th and 12th century. And then adapted 24 poems in Carmina Burana were set to music by Carl Orff in 1936. Most famously, O Fortuna, which is one of those very, very, very famous. Let me see what it has. The opening and closing movements of it are used in so many films, it's ridiculous. There's actually an O Fortuna in popular culture. Um, anyway, what am I still doing on there? Get away. So, and he was actually um, he was actually adopted by the Nazis and then adopted by the post-Nazi Germans as well, as being sort of, he wasn't pro-Nazi or anti-Nazi. He sort of just went along, trying to survive, which, during that era you could certainly see people trying to do. Unfortunately, more than for the, not to lighten the victims of that era, but you could see how Germans during that time were not fighting them, being violent bastards that the Nazis were. Karl Orff was not fighting them maybe as much as other people would hoped, but he was also a composer. He wasn't necessarily working with the Nazis, he wasn't necessarily working against the Nazis, he was just working during and trying to keep his head down. Best that can be said about Karl Orff during that period. But O Fortuna is what I wanted to talk about, because contextualism doesn't matter. O Fortuna has been used in dramatic pieces, dark pieces, battle pieces, all the frigging time. So often. And it's just one of those things that pops up in dark places. Alright. I think I've beaten that horse as much as possible. Let's move on to Prokofiev. Back to the Russians to finish us out. Prokofiev. Oh, yeah. Prokofiev, 1938. What's the name of this one? It's not. I'm getting this. Prokofiev is also from another another story adapted by a play? It was a movie. Actually, I think this was a movie. And what was the... Alexander Nevsky is the movie or play. It was the battle between Alexander Nevsky's Novgorodian troops and somebody else. It's a battle piece. I listened to it today. The next one's also a battle piece. And as such, it's certainly dark. Is it horrific? No, not really. It's atmospheric, and it's action. It could be adapted to action horror. Same as Carmina Burana or Duel of Fates or Shostakovich in a second. There's... Oh, pardon me. It's depicting a battle, and it's actually, by listening to it, you get transported to that battle, which is a very good thing if you're listening to the music. And it's also this Alexander Nevsky story, so it's not a horror story, it's a battle story, a war story. But it's that, I'm mentioning it just because it's that dark sort of thing. Same with Symphony No. 8 by Shostakovich. also Russian, also Soviet. 1943 for Shostakovich. It was commissioned by Stalin, I believe, to celebrate the Russian victory over the Germans. Shostakovich, being Shostakovich, was definitely a great composer. Wasn't going to do a pro-Russia, woot, go Russia, anthemic, we're so awesome sort of thing. He was, he did the whole thing of, this is what it was like during the war, during these battles. And those battles were intense and not necessarily woot, go Russia. It was, holy crap, this is a horror, but not in our sense. So actually, the third movement of Symphony Number 8 is definitely worth listening to if you're into this sort of thing. Is it horror? No. Is it atmospheric? Yes. Is it that action horror atmosphere soundtrack sort of thing? Yeah, it is. This one being a symphony is not necessarily based on a story. It was commissioned to commemorate Russian World War II stuff. So it's battle-esque, it's martial, I suppose is the proper term, but it's not horrific, or it's not set to a specific story. Like, this is when this happens, when Bob fights Joe, this is that third movement there. No, it's just general battle stuff. A battle, not the battle of the ice like Prokofiev, but battle-y stuff and horrors of war. The Eighth Symphony in general is essentially the whole thing is about the horrors of war, with the third movement being the action part of the horrors of war. So yeah, that's basically what I have for Shostakovich, and that's the 7th out of the guys. I like Shostakovich. I think I like the Germans more than the Russians. Sorry, I think I like the Russians more than the Germans. They're certainly more. I just sort of like them more. Personal preference, I suppose. I think the most horrific on here is Der Erlkönig, which is Schubert, which is German. Because Der Erlkönig by Goethe, German, is a horror poem. It's a narrative poem. It is a horror narrative poem, and therefore, the musical adaptation, operatic adaptation, is going to be horror as well. Jesse Norman's version is fantastic. If you get a chance to check it out. Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau's version is also good. And of course, Night on Bald Mountain, I would check out the Fantasia version. I think that's available online. I'm almost positive, but I'm not 100%. I'll see if I can put a link in here someplace or below. Anyway, thanks, folks. I'll try to get back as soon as I get contemporary horror music. I'm not sure if I have to split that one up into 2 videos or not. I keep adding more stuff onto my thing. I'm going to be into the 60s before this course is done. But that's okay. Anyway, folks, have a great night. I'll see you next time. My name is Drew. Thanks for watching Horror Analysis.